You made us look bad, and now we are getting our revenge. That's the whole thing. Republicans whining for an hour about their hurt feelings and trying to make up for it by scoring political points. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's the gist. The more part is, Republicans messed around in court and completely banned abortion in Arizona. Which, fun fact, is incredibly unpopular. How unpopular? Well, if an election was held today, 65% of Arizonans would vote for a constitutional amendment protecting the right to an abortion. So pretty unpopular. Republicans have decided to do something about this without delay, so they don't get unelected at the next election. Unfortunately, without delay also means without planning, so here's what that looks like.
Is directed to immediately sign the measure in open session, and the clerk is directed to immediately transmit the measure to the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. You have a substitute motion. Mr. Livingston.
I have a substitute motion. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move that we recess to the sound of the bell immediately.
You've heard the secondary motion. I heard a second. All in favor of that motion, vote aye. Aye. All opposed, vote no. Ayes have it, so ordered.
Yeah, the first go-around at fixing the problem ended with Republicans adjourning in chaos. Meanwhile, Democrats actually did something. Seeing Republicans waffling on whether to repeal an incredibly unpopular law, they pushed their advantage to the max. Shame, shame, shame. Indeed. When the adjournment hit, they did what any sane politician worth his salt would do, and made a big show of it. Chanting, pointing, the whole 9 yards. Would the Democrats always have this level of guts? Several Democrats even went over and disrupted a press conference being hosted by Republican Matt Grease. And that brings us to now, because when Democrats did that, Republicans responded with this.
That was loud. The House Ethics Committee is called to order.
Fantastic. It is wonderful, after all these years of hearing how alpha and macho Republicans are compared to their snowflake, safe space Democratic counterparts, that yelling at them triggers committee hearings. Anyway, the complaint is against 2 Democrats. Specifically these 2, Representatives Analise Ortiz and Representative Oscar de los Santos. They did not show up for the hearing, but I'll get to that in a minute. Matt Grease also did not show up, the supposed victim of this supposed crime. Probably because he's from a swing district and wants nothing to do with any of this. So who filed the complaint? Allow me to introduce Representative Barbara Parker. Here's her explaining why she filed the complaint, as she thought there was going to be violence.
Mr. Chair and committee, I'm a trained health professional. And so one thing that we are trained to do is to assess a situation and a patient and a person. And what I assessed with the neck veins that were popping out, the red flushed faces, the straining and the screaming, and you can see where De Los Santos even struck one of the desks, I thought they're going to lose it. This is going to get out of control. And that's why, and again, I've seen it many times before.
I'd point out that there are no flush faces nor neck veins visible in the pictures from the event, but let's just let her roll with this. In case you hadn't noticed, Parker has the worst case of main character syndrome you will ever see. And from the reaction of the Republican chairman on the committee, he knows it.
Barbara, we're going to start with just, you're part of the complaint. In 30 seconds, what did you see when you were sitting on the House floor?
This is how he introduces her. Please keep the complaint to 30 seconds. Pretty please. Don't go off on a crazy rant. Imagine being so insufferably self-involved that even your friends are begging you to please pull it back. And I'd love to spend all day with Parker, from finding out that she owns a thesaurus.
Then what happened was, as this event was taking place, I want to make it very clear, I was indeed frightened, I was indeed threatened, I was indeed intimidated, alarmed and aghast, a plethora of emotions.
Or finding out that she and her lobbyist best friend both had the same opinion on what happened.
I want to use a quote from a lobbyist who's been down here for 35 years, and I've been here for 30 years as an activist in that gallery many, many times. And my words are exactly as hers.
But I have other stuff to go over. So you've seen the clown, let me show you the rest of the circus. Because this is a circus, not an ethics hearing. The rules change at random, and Republicans can't even keep their story straight about what's happening. For example, the committee chairman says this isn't a courtroom.
Now, I'd like to clarify that this proceeding is not a judicial proceeding. Mr. Barton, I know you're an attorney. We've had attorneys in here before, and we are not a court.
This is because while Representatives De Los Santos and Ortiz didn't show up, they did send a lawyer, Jim Barton. That warning from the committee chairman to not try any lawyer magic like saying objection or using the law is to protect them. This is a committee hearing. Courtroom rules don't apply. Fair enough. Courtrooms and legislatures are very different. But then this happens.
I've been here on and off for 30 years. I've never seen this behavior on the floor of the House. The floor of the House is a respectable place, very similar to a courtroom. If this behavior was in a courtroom, it'd be held in contempt, I'm sure. Any apology?
Oh, it's not a court except when they want to make jibes in an overly emotional voice at De Los Santos and Ortiz. Then it's fair game.
If you were in court, are you a trial lawyer? I mean, you stand up in front of the judge, in front of a jury. Do you do that on a regular basis?
Mr. Chair, Representative Grantham, I do.
Okay.
Mr. Grantham, too. I just want to mention that we're in an ethics hearing, not a court, but
Yep.
proceed, please.
I'm just curious, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Barton, if you were in a courtroom and the judge recessed the courtroom or business was done for the day and you exhibited those behaviors because you didn't like the outcome of the day, what would happen to you?
Wow, that would be a great point, except for the fact that you've made it very clear that the legislature isn't a courtroom. Why do you keep comparing the legislature to a courtroom after you've made it very clear we aren't to think of it like that? And this rule-changing nonsense happens in other places, too.
So by way of clarity, the sole question for this committee's consideration is whether Representative De Los Santos and Representative Ortiz violated the House rules.
This makes it very clear that they don't want to bring in outside issues to this hearing. We're dealing with what actually happened. We'll ignore everything else. It's the kind of issue neutrality I can understand if not fully agree with. You don't want to muddy the waters. There are rules. We're just looking to see if rules were broken. So we aren't going to talk about all the surrounding hubbub. We are going to focus solely on the issue.
This committee will not consider any collateral issues. Okay?
If that's the rules, I can respect it. There's a rule against X, so we are just going to look at whether X happened. Except then this happens.
We went into a recess. We did not end business for the day. Representative Gress, made a motion to actually repeal a ban, which should have been on the side of the Democrats. Yet they attacked him and called him a liar. Why would they call him a liar?
I thought we weren't talking about collateral issues during this hearing. This hearing is about specific behavior, and now we're talking about motivations. Why did they call Matt Grease a liar? Why does it matter? Does the behavior in question violate any rules? That was supposed to be the basis for this hearing. And now we're talking about motivations. And let's give the answer to that question, because the answer is largely irrelevant, except how the chairman responds to it.
Mr. Chair, the video explained why they called him a liar. They said that it was a pretext that he would make the motion, that his past actions showed that that was not something that he felt, that he, in fact, in the past had supported other things, and they called him a liar because they felt that he was taking advantage of the press and letting them see one thing when, in fact, he had done other things. That's the answer to your question of why they called him a liar.
But that's your opinion.
I'm not adopting those things.
Yeah, that's your opinion.
One, that's a fact. Chaplik asked why they called Matt Grease a liar, and that's why they called him a liar. There's no universe where that's not a fact. Two, he does this several times. Yells, "That's an opinion," like it's some sort of Magic the Gathering counterspell that discredits everything the person just said.
Why they called him a liar.
But that's your opinion.
I'm not adopting those things.
Yeah, that's your opinion. Again, that's your opinion. I wish they were here to answer that.
It's delayed. And then
That's an
also,
opinion.
obviously, I'm sorry, man.
That's an opinion.
It's such a mystery why Reps De Los Santos and Ortiz didn't show up. It's like they thought they couldn't get a fair hearing at this not a courtroom. From their idiot accuser who is more interested in behaving like a cartoon character.
To me, an ear riot is the chanting, marching up and down the aisles with fists raised, pointing, and and threatening with loud screaming and inciting all the rest of the Democrats to do the same and have that escalate.
To a committee chairman who will interrupt them at every occasion to scream that whatever they are saying is just an opinion.
Why they called him a liar.
But that's your
I'm not
opinion.
adopting those things.
Yeah, that's your opinion. Again, that's your opinion. I wish they were here to answer that.
It's delayed. And then
That's an
also,
opinion.
obviously, I'm sorry, man.
That's an opinion.
Why would you show up for these clowns to yell at you over perceived slights? Especially when the whole thing is just cooked up to divert attention from the real issue that Republicans in Arizona had just outlawed abortion. Jim Barton, the attorney for De Los Santos and Ortiz, said something pretty smart in his closing argument.
Because in the complaint, we saw two basic concepts that were expressed. One was a concept of a lack of decorum, a lack of dignity, disrespectful behavior. I think that's one thing. And then we also saw things that use language like riotous, insurrectionist, fear for their lives, and or fear for their health, things like that. You'll see in some of the things we quoted that there is a problem that we have in America right now of people saying that they don't feel safe when they feel challenged. And I think it's an opportunity for the committee to say, that's not the way it works. When you feel challenged, even if you feel uncomfortable, even if you feel disrespected, that doesn't mean you feel unsafe.
Does anyone doubt that Republicans are trying to hype this incident up as some sort of distraction from their misdeeds? They should try to have some dignity and take responsibility when they screw up, instead of trying to prosecute opposition politicians who take advantage of their incompetence. Alright, that's the end of the video. But to bring greater awareness to the importance of archiving audio and video recordings, I like to praise or damn the archiving practices of wherever I got my audio and video from. In this case, it's the Arizona legislature, and it's quite impressive. It has 17 years of very well organized video archives from the legislature that are easily accessible on its website. The people of Arizona should be proud, and I give the state legislature a silver star for their archiving practices. This is History Suck, and I'll see you at the next committee hearing.